And welcome on in to the latest edition of the Blue Horseshoe podcast. He is George Bremer. I am Ryan Hickey. It is Thanksgiving week, George. Hopefully the bye was fun, but it's time to get the second half of the season kicked off. One quick programming note for this week, because it's a holiday week, so our schedule is a little bit different than normal. We are recording this on our normal recording day, Tuesday morning, but because it's the holiday, George, we figured, you know what, no, we're not going to be recording on Thanksgiving. That's for sure. The turkey is not going to wait for us to preview the Colts Bucks game. So you're actually going to do two pods on Tuesday and release both of them on Tuesday afternoon. So you're going to hear me and George kind of preview the game a little bit. Coming up on Sunday, we're also going to have Scott Reynolds of Pewter Report in a separate podcast to get his thoughts on this matchup. That will also be released usually on Thursdays for a game week, normal game week. This week, it'll be on Tuesday. So if you're traveling on Wednesday, if you're traveling on Thursday, if you're traveling back home on Friday, or going out to the stores for some old school Black Friday shopping, which I guess no one really does anymore, right? Everyone's doing it online. So I guess the days of lining up at like 6 a.m. outside of Target are over. But in case you are doing that, hey, you have something to listen to on the drive. So Blue Horseshoe podcast recorded early this week to get it out for you whenever you are ready to listen, to get ready for Sunday's game. George, the bye week came and gone. I feel like it just blinked and it's over, but here we are, home stretch here, just like we thought when the season started. Big second half push starting right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I mean, all along, look at this and said, this last 7 weeks is going to determine everything about this season, right? Right from the draft way back in April. And one thing that seems obvious is, the AFC is wide open. I mean, the bye week taught us anything. It's that there is no dominant team out there in this conference. And I think as we sit here recording right now, I think 11 teams have 5 losses or less in the league. It's a crazy number. And there's 2 or 3 more with 6. So still big swings, wins and losses. You can make a big move week to week in this conference. And I think that's going to make for a lot of interesting, podcasts over this last 7 weeks, because the overreactions both ways are going to be real easy right now, because win and all of a sudden you're the 4 seed, lose the next week and you're out. It's going to be that kind of a situation, I think, for especially those last 3 spots. Those wild card spots right now are wide open. There's about 5 or 6 teams fighting for those 3 spots legitimately. And anybody could shake out in any way.
It really could. And that leads you to this first point of the pod, George, and that's this. Last week, we talked about expectations of final 7 games. We gave our preview for the final home stretch. So if you missed that, check it out wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Podcast. Really just kind of an overall state of the Colts here as we kind of were looking ahead to this final 7-game push. Last week, we both said, George, Colts are not making the playoffs. After doing a lot of research, George, after taking the bye week to consume a lot of AFC-specific football, I got to sit here 1 week later, George, and say I am wrong. I am changing my prediction. I think right now the Colts are making the playoffs. Lock it up. They are getting the 7th seed. Here is why. It's more, honestly, about the rest of the league than it's the Colts. Like, the schedule is very manageable, and we'll get to that here in a second. And it's going to be a lot on Gardner Minshew to see if he can really kind of carry this team when he has opportunities to. But if you look around the rest of the AFC, I think right now we could say 6 of the 7 playoff spots are locked in. Ravens are making the playoffs. Chiefs, despite their loss on Monday night, are making the playoffs. Jaguars, I think, are going to make the playoffs either as division winners or as a wild card. Dolphins are making the playoffs. I think the Browns right now at 7-3, with even though Dorian Thompson-Robinson is their quarterback, not Deshaun Watson, at 7-3, I think the Browns are making the playoffs. And I think the Texans are making the playoffs at 6-4. I think whether they play Jacksonville this weekend, a big game in the division to see who gets the number 1 seed or who gets the top billing right now in the AFC South. But I think however it shakes out, Houston wins the division, Jacksonville wins the division. I think both teams are making it. And so those 6 spots in some order, I think will be the 6 teams right now in the playoffs. And then you look at the 7th and final seed. It is between the Pittsburgh Steelers, who on Tuesday morning just fired their offense coordinator, Matt Canada, who are a disaster on offense. Also, the Colts are going to play them at home in a few weeks. So you have that, you got a tiebreaker there. you really going forward here really got things set up in your favor. You got the Buffalo Bills, who have a killer schedule, who the next just 2 games alone play the Eagles and the Chiefs. Really tough right now for Buffalo. And then behind you got the Broncos, Bengals, which the Colts again now are playing in a few weeks without Joe Burrow, and the Raiders at 5 and 6. A lot of the teams either directly above you or below you, you are playing. And a lot of these teams, even if you're not playing them in the case of the Bills, they have a brutal schedule. I just don't think they're going to be sitting there at 10 and 7. I think for the Bills, honestly, it's going to be like 8 and 9 with that killer schedule. You look around, George, I just don't have any, honestly, faith right now. In the Steelers can't do it. In the Broncos can't do it. In the Bills can't do it. In the Raiders can't do it. I got no choice. It's the Colts. It is the Colts.
I mean, it's just how it plays out. I mean, you're looking at, like we were talking about, really interesting race. Can Houston keep this up? I mean, every week you wonder, and every week they get it done. They had a scare against the Cardinals this time around, but they came out on the right side of it. So, they're sitting there now at 6-4. Got to be feeling really good through 10 weeks about where they're at. And D'Amico Ryan's looking like a really strong Coach of the Year candidate. I think at this point, C.J. Stroud has won the Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't know what anybody else is going to be able to do to surpass him there. He's getting the MVP conversation. Forget about just Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's going, for the big fish right now. So I think Houston's in a really good spot. Cleveland's going to be really interesting to watch. Ugly win against Pittsburgh, but again, you survive. And I think in this conference right now, that's everything. If you just survive in advance, that's what the AFC is all about. And at 7-3, they've got to really collapse. I mean, they could win 3 more games the rest of the way and still probably feel pretty safe about their chances. So, I think they would really have to fall apart, and that defense has looked outstanding. And Myles Garrett is also in the MVP conversation.
Yes,
as a likely defensive player of the year. So, I think both those teams, I think, have really good arguments for sticking around and possibly winning their divisions, but certainly getting wild card, slots locked up. The one team I think that's outside the playoffs right now that I really have an eye on is Denver. And they've just caught fire lately. You saw it again, their most recent game with Russell Wilson throwing a touchdown pass there right at the end and, surviving against Minnesota, who's also pretty hot right now. They're the one that I think the Colts probably have to worry about the most in that group. Buffalo's probably the most talented team of all those remaining. But as you said, their schedule, they didn't take care of business early in the year. And now their schedule is extremely difficult moving forward. So if they get in, hats off to them, because they're going to have to really play some outstanding football. And I also wonder how the late bye week affects them. Last year, that was one of the many things that was tough on the Colts. You're so banged up by the time you finally get to the bye week that I don't know if it does you as much good. When you're in that week 14 kind of area, really, really hard, I think, to bounce back from that. We'll see how the Bills are able to handle that. And the Colts, I just got to get more consistent. I think that's the biggest issue. All these teams is going to be consistency, but the Colts in particular, I think the biggest issue for them is just being, the same team from week to week. And we really haven't seen that throughout the year. Big roller coaster, some of that's been injuries. Some of it's been other suspensions and things like that have caused them to change the lineup and change the way they play. But now I think you 10 games in, 11 weeks in, they need to establish an identity and be able to have like a baseline performance that they can replicate here over the last 7 weeks.
That is for sure, right? And that's one of the reasons why last week we were talking about this team in the playoff push. It does come down to that C word, consistency. In the last few weeks, they have been consistently bad offensively. Now, consistently good defensively, which is the reason why they beat the Panthers and they beat the Patriots. But one of the reasons, George, for my optimism is if you look at the schedule, the final 7 games of this season, I would argue right now, the Colts have the quarterback advantage in 5 of the last 7 games. I think right now, I would say this weekend, I would still take Baker Mayfield. Closer, but I think Baker still has the edge over Gardner Minshew. And I think the Texans right now clearly have the quarterback advantage over Gardner Minshew and the Colts. But you look at the rest of the schedule, right? You got Will Levis and the Titans next week on the road. Will Levis, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks the last 3 games, ever since he started off hot with that 4 touchdown performance against, it was the Falcons. In his first ever start, he's come down to earth, been sub 60% completion percentage on this season, so he's been erratic. And again, not throwing touchdown passes every single time he drops back like he did against the Falcons in that start number 1. No Joe Burrow for the Bengals. It's going to be Jake Browning, who has 15 career pass attempts to his name going into this week. Steelers, again, you just fired Matt Canada. Kenny Pickett stinks. Second worst passing attack in all of the league. And they're barely getting to 17 points a game. It's been very ugly for the Steelers offensively. The Falcons are going back to Desmond Ridder after initially benching him a few weeks ago. He has 10 total touchdowns, George, 12 turnovers, 6 picks, 6 fumbles. Reason why he got benched in the first place, he can't hold on to the ball. That's been a problem for Ridder. Now they're going back to Desmond for this home stretch here. That's one where he has not been consistent. And, well, actually, that's not true. He has been consistently giving the ball away. And that's part of the reason why he got benched in the first place. So now he is back for Atlanta. And then the Raiders with Aiden O'Connell, 3 touchdowns, 6 interceptions so far in his season. He has thrown a pick in 4 out of the 5 games he's played in. Like, you look at right now, just the quarterbacks on this schedule coming up here. I think the first game of this stretch, the Buccaneers, the last game against the Texans, I would say that the Colts don't have the advantage. The other 5 games sandwiched in between. I think if you had a draft and said, who would you rather have on your team, you're taking Gardner Minshew over any of those other 5 quarterbacks that you're playing. And so that should, if you have the quarterback advantage, George, you have to take advantage of that if you're the Colts here and win a lot of these games.
Yeah, that's where we differ. Like, I do agree that on paper he's the better quarterback in those matchups, but I just haven't seen enough to think he's going to take advantage. And that's why Sunday is such a huge game for the Colts in so many ways, is he's got to prove that he can go out there and make plays. And I just haven't seen it. You know, maybe it's recency bias, and maybe the last 2 weeks are lingering too much in my mind right now. But that's why I still am down on the team's playoff chances, because the schedule's there. The opportunity is absolutely there. There's no question about it. You just laid out the quarterback situation. Baker Mayfield is by far the second best quarterback they're going to face over the next 7 weeks. And really, by the time you get to CJ Stroud, your business may be taken care of. I mean, if you are able to really feast on those 5 games in between Mayfield and Stroud, you know, that game may not mean much aside from seeding, depending on how everything else shakes out. But if you go into that week at 10-6, you're probably either clinched or having a really simple scenario where, like, maybe one other team has to lose that week for you to get in. But right now, I think the key to this team, and I think the critical part of those 5 quarterbacks between Mayfield and Stroud, is the defense. You saw them step up and shut down 2 bad offenses the last 2 weeks. If they can continue to do that, I think that's the most critical thing for this game going forward. Colts formula for me over the last 7 weeks: play outstanding defense, take advantage of the quarterbacks you're playing, and run the ball. I think if they do those 2 things, they shorten games, and they don't ask too much of Minshew, and he's able to make the plays when they're there, they've got a shot. Right now, based on that New England game, and again, recency bias, I'm not sure how confident I feel in their ability to do that. But again, that's why Sunday to me becomes really, really, really intriguing.
I think Sunday is going to determine how these next 7 games go. Like, if the Colts win, I feel obviously very good about my playoff prediction. If they lose, George, I think I'm going to call the season over. If you look at it, like, not to be like hyperbolic here or just kind of be over the top, but if you really look at what is going on right now for the Colts in their favor, why Sunday's game is so important. You're coming off the bye, so you are well rested and you have time if you're Shane Steichen to really digest the Buccaneers defense and see how you can take advantage, especially in the passing game. We'll talk to Scott Pewter here in our next podcast, Behind Enemy Lines, but that Buccaneers secondary stinks. They're one of the worst in the league. So you have to take advantage of that. And you now, if you're Shane Steichen, have 2 weeks to game plan and figure out how to get Gardner Minshew back on track. The Buccaneers are coming off a loss to the 49ers. They were in San Francisco. So again, you played on Sunday, but still it's a long flight home. You're tired. Now you're going back on the road as well. If you're the Colts, you're at home, you're rested, you are healthier. put that in air quotes because no one got hurt last week. This is, and again, you're going against a bad secondary. You're going to need Gardner Minshew to play well in order to win games. You can't go like Jonathan Taylor in 2021, feed him 40 times a game, have him go for 185 yards and expect to win every single game, ground and pound. You need Gardner Minshew to play well. And this is a game where if he can't play well against one of the worst passing secondaries in all of the NFL, George, then I don't see how you can really believe in this team going forward that he'll turn it around against the Titans or against the Steelers or against the Bengals. This is a game where it is catered for you to win at home. Find a way to do it. If you can, obviously right now you got a step in the right direction. If you can't, George, that's where I think it's time to wave the white flag on the season.
Yeah, I mean, just to further that point, as far as the matchup goes, Tampa Bay is 6th against the run too, so it's not really a great idea to try to give Jonathan Taylor 40 carries in that game. They need Gardner Minshew to step up. For me, I'm looking more at the AFC games. I mean, you got 5 of these last 7 are against AFC opponents. So those to me are the critical games. They're all going to be tiebreakers, whether because they're head-to-head, like the Steelers, the Raiders, the Bengals, and the Texans, or even the Titans end up in that, if you get into 3-way ties or you get into where there isn't a head-to-head advantage, the conference record is the next thing. So you win those 5 games, not only do you get to 10 wins, but you're probably going to be sitting pretty good in most of the tiebreaker scenarios as well. So for me, if they can win those 5 games, and it's a big if they can win those 5 games against the AFC, I think they're in no matter what happens against Tampa Bay or Atlanta. That's why I don't feel like the Tampa game is a must win in that regard. But I think everything you just laid out is going to tell you a lot about the Colts' ability to win those 5 games because you've got to have, if nothing else, they've got to have a big performance from Gardner Minshew on Sunday. Like you said, 31st ranked pass defense in the league right now. The Bucs have been on a terrible streak. They had an early bye after week 4 or week 5. They were 3-1 going into that bye. They've lost 5 of their last 6 games. We've seen the Colts, be a get-right game for New Orleans. They were somewhat of a get-right game for Cleveland. I mean, they definitely have helped Cleveland on this path to being 7-3 and, right now a half game out of the number 1 seed in the AFC. The Colts cannot be a get-right game for Tampa Bay on Sunday. And I think a lot of that comes down to Gardner Minshew. Can he, is Josh Downs healthy after a bye week? You would hope so. That need, a little bit better shape. Can you get Michael Pittman, the big plays? We've seen him get involved with catches. Can you get bigger plays? Can you have a bigger yards per completion with him? And then, this is definitely the week to get Alec Pierce involved. We say that every week. You got the 31st ranked pass defense in the NFL. If he doesn't get involved on Sunday, maybe just take the rest of the year off.
That's fair. Yeah, if you're Alec Pierce, if you don't get the thing with him is it's not like he's just stinking, right? He's not catching the ball and not getting open. Anytime he's getting the ball, he's making plays. The issue is he's getting the ball once or twice a game, and that's it. And even if he makes a play, it's still not good enough to garner another target, let alone opportunity to make a play. It does not make any sense. But that's why, this is, to your point, you got to take advantage and you got to play well in this game because the areas you have struggled in are the areas right now the Buccaneers are really struggling in. And if you can't take advantage, it's there's no reason to feel confident moving forward here, especially when you look at the Bucs are a very blitz heavy team. We'll talk to Scott about this. They blitz the second most amount in terms of blitz percentage in the NFL, but they don't get home a lot. But they blitz a ton, but their pressure rate is middle of the league. So again, for Gardner Minshew, this has to be a week, George. We talked about it after the Patriots game where he was seeing ghosts. He had happy feet, however, whatever you want to whatever phrase you want to use to describe it, he unnecessarily, almost anytime he dropped backpedaled further than he should have, left the pocket earlier than he should have. The Buccaneers are going to try to take advantage of that. And they're going to pressure the crap out of him. They're going to be blitzing 5 guys, 6 guys, maybe even 7 guys. Now, again, they've struggled getting home. So those blitzes, in theory, have not worked as well as they should have. But if Gardner Minshew can just stand in the pocket and stand tough, you're going to have a lot of one-on-one matchups. And that's going to mean giving your guys a shot, like you said, and make a play. You could throw the ball up to Alec Pierce. You can even throw it short to Michael Pittman Jr., let him break one tackle. If the Buccaneers are blitzing, one broken tackle, it could be 80 yards to the house. So it is one of those situations where, again, if you can't take advantage of what the Buccaneers' defensive weaknesses are in this game, there's no reason to believe you can against any other team right now on your schedule. And that's why if you're the Colts, you have to win this game. Now, look, anyway, any means necessary obviously is important, but you really have to win this game through the air.
And with those blitzes too, I mean, this could be another big game for Taylor in the passing game. We've seen him targeted more often. He's on pace, or he was at least a week ago, before the bye, for a career high in receptions, even though he missed the first month of the season. That's how much he's being targeted. It's not a huge number because his career high is like 42 or something. It's not like he's ever been a major part, but he's more a part of the passing game than he's ever been before. And I would say, when you've got a team that's blitzing as much as this team is and not getting home, that outlet to Jonathan Taylor is a real weapon on Sunday. And we've seen what he can do throughout his career. If you get him the ball in open space, make those big plays, that could get things started too. And that can start opening up things downfield. Because you hit a couple big plays to Taylor and they creep up a little bit. And now all of a sudden you've already got a bad secondary and you can start picking on them deeper. Then it could be a breakout day for the offense, which I think is what, the best case scenario is for Indianapolis on Sunday. But again, it all starts with Gardner. Can you go back to the guy he was in relief of Anthony Richardson before he took over the starting role, full time? I mean, since then, we've seen poor decisions. We've seen too much hesitancy. You hate to use the word panic, but from the couch, that's what it looks like at times. He needs to be that calm, cool, collected veteran quarterback. If he is, then I think their chances of making the playoffs go up significantly.
And to another area to watch with specifically Gardner Minshew, if he's able to limit this area, you got to feel good about him going forward. That's turnovers, right? That's been one of the biggest bugaboos with him is when he's been slinging it, he's also been giving it away to the other team a ton. And the last 2 weeks, he's been more conservative. Now, that's led to more conservative offense for the Colts and not a lot of points being scored, but it's also cut down on his turnovers. But you look at the Buccaneers, the two things they do really well, taking the ball away and locking teams down in the red zone. They are one of the best teams in terms of turnover differential. They're +6, so they're good at forcing turnovers. And again, Gardner Minshew, as we've seen when he's kind of unleashed, has been a little bit careless with the football. And also, too, the Buccaneers, you mentioned before, like they're one of the worst defenses between the 20s. But as soon as you get in that red zone, they lock down. They are the best red zone defense in the league. Obviously, right, a big part of this game is going to be, can you score touchdowns and not field goals? But also a big part of that is going to be, can you take care of the ball in the red zone? And that's one where the Colts have been one of the better red zone teams in all the NFL. And that's one where Gardner Minshew's decision-making especially is going to be a major key here. Can you not only get 6 when you're inside the 20, but can you also, if you're not going to get 6, make sure you're at least putting points on the board and not having a bad turnover deep in Buccaneers territory that kills a drive and kills momentum?
Absolutely. And I think this is a game on paper that could be a shootout. I mean, when you look at it, and Baker Mayfield is very much a boomer bust type of quarterback, but he's the type of guy who can take advantage of the Colts struggles in secondary as well, especially with Mike Evans out there. They've got a chance to go and make those big plays. So this could be the kind of game where finishing in the red zone is the difference in the contest. Where the Colts don't finish drives and kick field goals, and they get Bucks get a couple big plays from Mayfield, and that's the difference in the football game. So again, I think Mayfield has to be on his game from a Tampa Bay standpoint for sure, but Minshew's got to be on his game. There is more on his shoulders this week than there has been probably in any game since he took over as the full-time guy.
I'd agree with that. I'm with you on that. I think you're 100% right about that, especially when you look at the matchup and the weaknesses of that Buccaneers defense. This is going to be a Gardner game. which is why I feel like this game is really like you can really make, I think, sweeping judgments based on the Colts' future for this season, based on if Gardner can play well and take advantage of a bad defense, or if he can't, it's like, well, this is like the easiest. This was your easiest matchup of the season of remaining to take advantage of and put big numbers up. If you can't do that, then I think this team is in trouble. With that said about Baker, though, boomer bust, George, this feels like, on paper at least, a chance to get it right for this Colts defense and basically have a Saints do-over. Because if you look at how the Buccaneers offense is run, it is similar to New Orleans in that you do have a boomer bust quarterback. Like Derek Carr, I think, is more consistent than Baker, but it is kind of one of those, like, he can either play really well or he can play really poorly. You have two great weapons on the outside in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, just like the Saints had in Michael Thomas and Chris Olave. You have a running back in Rashad White that I would say, similar to Alvin Kamara, is more dangerous out of the backfield than he is running the ball. Now, Kamara is way more effective running the ball than the Buccaneers are. The Buccaneers are the worst rushing offense in the league. So that's not a concern. Even without Grover Stewart, that should not be a concern or a big problem for this defense in terms of letting the Buccaneers run the ball down their throat. But it's like, on paper, this is a very similar matchup to the one they got torched by a few weeks ago, where, like you said, it was a get-right game for New Orleans. Those three offensive weapons clicked, and the Colts couldn't stop them and allowed 38 points. This is one of those games where it feels like this is your chance at a do-over. Like, if you are truly as good defensively as we've seen in the last two games against the Panthers and the Patriots, you come out here and you shut down Mike Evans. You limit Rashad White. You don't allow Chris Godwin to kill you on third down, and you get a do-over from that just awful performance in which they hung 38 points on you a few weeks ago at home.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been talking about offensively, Gardner Minshew is the key. I think defensively, I think the big thing we saw from them the last 2 weeks, the last two games they played, were takeaways. You know, they had big interceptions that obviously turned the game around against Carolina, and big interceptions late that sealed the game against New England. Mayfield's going to give you those chances. I mean, he's very Jameis Winston-like in that sense. You know, he's either going to give you the big play and it's going to be a touchdown for the Bucs, or he's going to give you the opportunity to make plays on your side of the field as well. And I think from a defensive standpoint, the Colts have got to take advantage of that. This has got to be one of those games where they continue this turnover streak that they've been on. You've seen Rodney Thomas take advantage, Julian Blackmon take advantage. You know, maybe this is the week where Jalen Jones gets his first career interception. They need somebody like that to step up. I would say minimum two picks if they want to win this football game.
The George Bremer magic number, 2 INTs. Baker will give you the opportunities. Get on the jugs machine this week, George, right? Put the turkey down. No mashed potatoes on Thursday. Let's get to the facility, get the jugs machine out there, and practice catching the ball with those hands. You know, DBs, right? There's a reason why they play DB and not receiver.
Yep. No, that's right. Every time someone drops one, you hear that too. That's why he's a defensive back. The linebackers got into the act too, you know, so they absolutely have to be ready. You know, getting pressure on him, I think, is critical, but the Colts have done that pretty well most of the year. I mean, I think you feel pretty good about the defensive line, even without Grover Stewart. Its ability to get after the quarterback has been pretty good. Dio Dangbo's in a real hot streak right now, and we'll see if he can continue that. But I think they're going to be able to get pressure on Mayfield. Can they take advantage and he will give them opportunities. Can they take advantage of that? I think that's the critical aspect of the game on the defense side. It'll be an interesting game, though, because I think you're right. There's a lot of similarities to the New Orleans game, which was the last home game for this team. As far away as that is, it's the last time they played at Lucas Oil Stadium. And they've got to start winning games there. I mean, that's an obvious thing to say, but they're 1-4 at home this year. And you look at the fact that you're 4-1 on the road. If you were even, you know, slightly above 500 at home, be right in the thick of the number one seed race right now. They'd be 7-3. They just went 3-2 at home. So win those home games. 4 of the last 7 are at home. You've got to start winning those home games. This is a winnable home game. I think it's critical, as you said, for a lot of reasons. I think in a long view, you know, the 10,000-foot view, Tampa Bay and Atlanta, it really doesn't matter what you do in those games if you take care of business in the AFC games. But if you're looking at the things the Colts need to do well over these final 7 weeks, get some big plays in the passing game, continue to get turnovers on defense, win at home. All three of those things are going to be critical on Sunday.
Two quick things here. Number one, the home record. You're 100% right. They got to go 3-1 here. Like, if you are a playoff team, bare minimum 3-1 down the stretch of these 4 home games. They're all winnable. And like I said, it's inexcusable how bad they have been at home. I was going to say going back to last year, but I mean, last year almost doesn't really count just because the second half of the year, how it was. But to your point, like, if you're truly a playoff team, you go 3-1 at home against the likes of the Buccaneers, the Steelers, the Raiders, and the Texans. 3-1. No excuses. Number two, the other thing I'm watching, George, defensively, is how Shaq Leonard bounces back. He had maybe arguably the worst game of his career on the last time we saw the Colts in Germany 2 weeks ago. We got torched, missed tackles, out of position, slow. This is a game where, again, Baker's going to give you opportunities to make plays defensively, to get takeaways. And for someone who's been upset about his role, who wants more time in the field, for the first time in a long time, Shaq's going to have to earn it. And this is a game where now you hope the bye week gives him some rest, gets him back. Hopefully he's still stewing about that game, and he comes out with a man, on with his hair on fire on Sunday, running around the field and causing havoc.
That's a really good point. He struggled mightily in that last time we saw him on the field, and he's got to get those splash plays. He's been talking about that himself. This is one of those games where it isn't just going to be third down. It feels like at times with Mayfield under quarterback, every down's third down. I mean, the way that he plays. So you've got to there's going to be opportunities on every down. And we haven't seen that from Shaq all year. There's not been one punch out. There's not been an interception. He just hasn't been, he's got a couple tackles for loss, but that's it. There's not been a sack, none of these things. This is the game, absolutely, for him to come out, get one of those, pick one of those categories, get one of them, force a fumble, have a huge tackle for loss in a big situation, a third down type of situation where you get a big tackle for loss, get a sack, get an interception. One of those things I think would help him really get back on track with the defense in general. That's what they've got to do. This game's all about sacking Baker Mayfield, getting the interceptions when the opportunity is there, and putting the Bucs behind the chains as often as possible.
Absolutely. And this is going to be a tremendous test of this defense, but also, again, a big test here for Gardner Minshew in this offense. This is, I think, truly, George, a make or break game here for this Colts going forward. If you think they are a playoff team, like, now I am back on board and saying they have to win this game on Sunday. And if they don't, I think even though it's an NFC game, you really feel like, just matchup wise, you don't feel great about the going forward the rest of the season. If they win it, you're going in a step in the right direction here to getting one of those, I think, really the only playoff spot right now up for grabs in the AFC, that 7th and final spot right now. And a lot of the teams ahead of you are on your schedule. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for the Colts here to take advantage and really make their mark one way or another going forward here. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Blue Horseshoe Podcast. But again, listen, make sure, appreciate you checking us out here, whether it's on YouTube, Blue Horseshoe Podcast, or wherever you do get your podcasts. We have another one coming out this week as well. It's already out if you're listening, and that is Behind Enemy Lines. We're interviewing Scott Reynolds of Pewter Report. Does a tremendous job covering the Buccaneers, kind of dive into some of these matchups here, preview this game. We'll also give you our game picks as well. That is in our other pod released early this week. So a little early happy Thanksgiving to everyone there as well. We'll talk to you on Sunday right here on the Blue Horseshoe Pod.